in the year 1229, in a remote Benedictine monastery in Bohemia, a monk committed a sin so terrible that it could not be spoken of. The abbot and the council of elders gathered to pass judgment. The sentence was absolute and terrifying. The monk was to be walled up alive. He would be placed in a niche in the stone wall, and brick by brick, the light of the world would be stolen from him until he was left in eternal darkness to die of thirst and starvation. Desperate to avoid this agonizing fate, the monk fell to his knees. He begged for mercy. He made a promise that sounded impossible. He swore that if they spared his life for just one more night, he would write a book, but not just any book. He promised to create a volume that would contain all the knowledge of the world. A book that would glorify the monastery forever. A book that would usually take a lifetime to write, completed before the sun rose the next morning. The abbot, perhaps out of curiosity or perhaps mocking the condemned man, agreed. He gave the monk parchment, ink, and quills, and locked him in his cell. The monk began to write. He wrote with the speed of desperation. But as midnight approached, looking at the pile of blank pages remaining, he realized he could not do it. His hand cramped. The ink ran dry. The task was humanly impossible. According to the legend, in that moment of absolute despair, the monk did not pray to God for strength. He knew God would not help him complete a task born of vanity and fear. So he whispered a prayer to the only entity who would listen. He called upon Lucifer. He offered his soul in exchange for the book to be finished by dawn. The legend says the devil appeared in the cell, took the quill, and finished the work in a single sitting. When the abbot unlocked the door in the morning, the monk was sitting on the floor, his eyes wide with a mixture of horror and awe. In front of him lay the Codex Gigas, the giant book. It was a manuscript so massive that it defied belief. And on page 290, dominating the parchment, was a full-page portrait of the artist himself, a terrifying green-faced, red-clawed image of the devil. Today, we are going to open the cover of the Devil's Bible. This is not a fairy tale. The book exists. It is currently housed in the National Library of Sweden in Stockholm. It is considered the eighth wonder of the medieval world. We are going to examine the forensic analysis of the handwriting. We are going to investigate the mysterious, missing pages that were torn out of the binding. And we are going to ask the forbidden question: did a human being really write this alone, or was it the product of a demonic pact? To understand the mystery of the Codex Gigas, you first have to understand the sheer physical scale of this object. It is unlike any other manuscript from the Middle Ages. It is 36 inches tall, 20 inches wide, and nearly 9 inches thick. It weighs 165 pounds. It takes 2 grown men to lift it. The pages are not made of paper. They are made of vellum-processed animal skin. Experts estimate that to create the writing surface for this one book, 160 donkeys had to be slaughtered and skinned. The sheer cost of the materials would have been astronomical, far beyond the budget of a simple monk trying to save his life. But the content is even more staggering. The monk promised to write all the knowledge of the world, and he tried. The Codex contains the entire Latin Vulgate Bible, both the Old and New Testaments, but that is just the beginning. Sandwiched between the Holy Scriptures are other texts that seem out of place. It contains the Antiquities of the Jews by Josephus. It contains the Etymologies of Isidore of Seville, which was the standard encyclopedia of the time. It contains a history of Bohemia. And then it gets strange. Deep within the pages, there are medical treatises. There are instructions on how to cure illnesses, how to treat the sick, and how to protect oneself from nightmares. And finally, there is a section on magic. The Codex contains a list of conjuring spells. Spells to identify a thief, spells to exorcise demons, spells to manipulate the elements. It is a bizarre and blasphemous mixture, the Word of God, sitting right next to the instructions for magic rituals. For centuries, historians believed the legend of the one night was just a myth. They assumed the book was the work of a team of scribes working for decades. In the medieval era, monasteries were factories of writing. One monk would write the text, another would draw the borders, and a third would paint the illuminations. It was an assembly line. But in the 21st century, the National Library of Sweden, allowed a team of paleographers, experts in ancient handwriting, to conduct a forensic analysis of the Codex Gigas. They used microscopic photography to study the ink and the stroke patterns of the letters. What they found shocked the scientific community and breathed new life into the legend. The analysis confirmed that the entire book, from the first page to the last, was written by a single person. There is no variation in the handwriting. The style, the slant of the letters, the pressure of the quill, it is identical throughout all 620 pages. But here is the impossible part. When a human scribe writes for years, their handwriting changes. They get older, they get tired. Their hand develops a tremor, their style evolves. Or at the very least, you can see the difference between the work done in the morning when the hand is fresh and the work done in the evening when the hand is cramping. The forensic analysis of the Codex Gigas shows none of this. The writing is incredibly consistent. It looks as if it was not just written by one person, but written in one continuous, uninterrupted stream. Michael Gullick, one of the experts who analyzed the manuscript, stated that if a scribe worked 24 hours a day, without eating, sleeping, or stopping, it would take 20 years to complete the calligraphy alone. If you include the complex illustrations and the time to dip the quill, it represents at least 30 years of non-stop labor. How does a single man maintain the exact same handwriting quality for 30 years? How does he not suffer from arthritis, eye strain, or simple fatigue? The uniformity of the ink also poses a mystery. In the Middle Ages, ink was made in small batches from crushed insect nests and metal salts. The mixture varied from week to week. One batch would be darker, the next more blue. But the ink in the Codex Gigas is remarkably uniform. This suggests that the entire supply of ink was prepared at once, which is chemically impossible for a 30-year project, or that the writing happened so fast that the ink didn't have time to degrade. This brings us back to the legend. The monk praying to Lucifer. If we strip away the religious language, are we looking at a case of automatic writing? We discussed in the previous videos how the Brothers of Darkness, or interdimensional entities, can hijack a human vessel. Is it possible that the monk, Herman the Recluse, entered a trance state? Is it possible that he became a conduit for an intelligence that possessed the entire library of human knowledge and downloaded it onto the vellum through his hand? The focal point of the book, and the reason for its dark reputation, is page 290, the portrait of the devil. It is unique in religious history. No other Bible from this era features a full-page image of Satan. He is depicted alone, crouching in an empty landscape between two towers. He has a green face, symbolizing death and decay. He has a split red tongue, symbolizing the liar. He wears a loincloth of ermine, the fur of kings, symbolizing that he is the prince of this world. What is terrifying is the page opposite him. On the left side, you have the kingdom of heaven, depicted as a perfect, orderly city. On the right, you have the devil. The book is designed so that when you close it, the devil and the city of heaven touch. They kiss. It represents the eternal duality, the balance of light and dark. But notice the condition of the pages. The vellum on these two pages is much darker, much dirtier than the rest of the book. This is because for 800 years, everyone who opened the book turned immediately to the devil. The oil from thousands of fingers has stained the skin, casting a literal shadow over the image of Lucifer. But there is something missing, something that suggests the book was censored. When you examine the binding, you can see that 10 to 12 pages have been deliberately cut out. The cut marks are clean and sharp. These pages were located right after the portrait of the devil. What was on those pages? The official theory is that they contained the monastic rules of the Benedictine order and were removed because they were boring or irrelevant. But that makes no sense. Why would someone deface the most valuable book in the world to remove standard rules that could be found in any other library? The darker theory is that those pages contained the specific ritual the monk used to summon the entity. They contained the payment. If the legend is true, and the monk traded his soul, perhaps those pages contained the transcript of the deal. Or perhaps they contained the dangerous incantations that Thoth warned us about in the Emerald Tablets, the gate to the beyond, that should not be opened. Whoever removed them wanted to ensure that no one else could use the book to repeat the ritual. They wanted the knowledge, but they feared the method. The history of the book itself seems to carry a curse. It has never stayed in one place for long, and disaster seems to follow it. The monastery where it was written, Podlazis, fell into financial ruin shortly after the book was finished. They were forced to sell the codex to a rival monastery just to buy food. But the new owners didn't fare much better. The monastery was struck by the Black Death. In the 16th century, the codex caught the eye of the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II. Rudolf was obsessed with the occult. He was the patron of alchemists like John Dee and Edward Kelly. He collected magical artifacts, seeking the Philosopher's Stone. He borrowed the Codex Gigas and refused to return it. He kept it in his castle in Prague, studying it late at night, descending deeper into madness and paranoia. But the curse continued. In 1648, at the end of the 30 Years' War, the Swedish army sacked Prague. They looted the castle. They didn't take the gold or the furniture. They took the books. They wanted the emperor's occult library. The Codex Gigas was seized as the ultimate prize of war and taken to Stockholm. In 1697, a massive fire broke out in the royal castle in Stockholm. The flames consumed the library. The Codex Gigas was trapped inside the inferno. The heat was so intense that the pages began to smolder. In a desperate attempt to save it, a servant threw the massive 160-pound book out of a fourth-story window. Legend says it landed on a man standing in the courtyard, crushing him to death instantly. The book survived, but the man did not. It seems the Devil's Bible always demands a sacrifice. Today, the book sits behind bulletproof glass in a climate-controlled room. It is safe. Or so we think. But the energy of the object is undeniable. Visitors often report feeling a strange chill or a sense of unease when looking at the portrait of the devil. So, what are we looking at? Is it a hoax, a masterpiece of endurance? Or is it evidence of something supernatural? If we look at it through the lens of the Enoch Files playlist, the Codex Gigas fits a pattern. We have seen how knowledge was given to humanity by the Watchers. We saw how the pyramids were built with lost technology. We saw how maps of Antarctica were drawn before the ice. In every case, the impossible knowledge is attributed to non-human intelligence. The monk, Hermann the Recluse, might have been the first recorded case of a download. Just as Tesla claimed his inventions appeared in his mind fully formed, just as Ramanujan claimed his mathematical formulas were given to him by a goddess in his dreams, perhaps the monk tapped into the same source. We call it the Akashic Record, the universal database of information. Or, in religious terms, he tapped into the knowledge of the fallen angels. The devil in the book is not depicted as a monster to be feared, but as a figure of power. He is the light-bearer, the one who brings illumination. This aligns with the Gnostic view that the serpent in the Garden of Eden was the liberator who gave humanity the gift of intellect. The Codex Gigas might be a Gnostic text disguised as a Catholic Bible. It places magic and exorcisms on the same level as Scripture, because to the author, they were both tools of spiritual power. The missing pages remain the biggest frustration. If we had them, we might know the truth. But maybe they were removed for our protection. If the Emerald Tablets warned us about the Hound of the Barrier, perhaps the Codex Gigas contained the whistle that calls him. There is one final detail that is often overlooked. The handwriting analysis showed that the scribe did not make mistakes. In 30 years of writing, there are almost no corrections, no crossed-out words, no smudges. This is superhuman. Any writer knows that the mind wanders, the hand slips. To write perfectly, without error, for thousands of pages, implies a state of mind that is not entirely human. It implies a machine-like focus, or a possession. The Codex Gigas stands as a monument to the forbidden. It is a physical object that should not exist. It is too big, too complex, and too perfect for one man to create. Yet the science says one man did it. This contradiction forces us to expand our definition of what is possible. Either the human mind is capable of feats of concentration that we have lost the ability to perform, or the monk had help from the other side. The monk ended his life walled up in the dark, but his work is bathed in light in a museum. He achieved his goal, he achieved immortality. But at what cost? In the next video, we are going to move from forbidden books to forbidden machines. We are going to verify if the Vatican is hiding a device that can look into the past. We are going to open the file on the Chronovisor, a machine allegedly built by a Benedictine monk, just like the author of the Codex, who claimed he filmed the crucifixion of Christ. Did the Vatican dismantle it because it revealed a history they didn't want us to see? You need to be subscribed because we are going to find out if time travel is real.